It's a very strange kind of place because he was not sitting here in blissfulness. There is a tradition that wherever Shiva stayed for a certain period of time, that place we tend to call it as Kailash.
If we have to generate this kind of energy, enormous amount of work has to be done.
If we get connected to this dimension of life, living blissfully is a natural process.
This is a space, this is a mountain which has seen many sages and seers right through the ages.
It's called Velingiri because Velingiri literally means either white mountain or silver mountain, but it's all green. So why it's referred to as Velingiri mountain is almost 10 months of the year, the peak of the mountain will always be the cloud and it looks silvery from here. It's called silver mountain or white mountain.
So these mountains are not just mountains for us. For me, it's like a whole large temple for me. It radiates a certain other dimension if you're willing. This is much, much more than just stone and earth. This has imbibed a certain sense of energy and a certain sense of knowing. This is generally here known as the Kailash of the South. Why it is referred to as the Kailash of the South is, it so happened, a very doughty South Indian woman fell in love with Shiva and she took a vow, if I marry, it's him and nobody else but him. And she called forth, being a certain kind of compassionate being, he started walking down. But a whole host of other beings, other gods, goddesses, celestial beings did not want him to have a South Indian wife. So they all conspired to stop him in so many ways. But it didn't work, he was determined to come and she set a date, if you do not come before this date, I am shedding my body. So he was hurrying down. He was to reach this place before sunrise and he was walking down. So the gods created a false sunrise by setting up a huge mound of camphor. They set up a false sunrise and Shiva thought sun is coming up and he thought he's failed, that he's not made it in time and she would have left. So he came very close to that place which is today called as Kanyakumari, where she stood and she left her body. So that's why she's called… it's a maiden's temple. She just stood there and left her body because he did not come in time. But he had come in time, he came very close, but he thought he didn't make it, just 22 kilometers away. He turned back and she left. He was so despondent, frustrated with himself, angry with himself. He came and he needed a place to sit down, so he went up Velingiri mountains and sat there. It's a very strange kind of place because he was not sitting here in blissfulness. He was not sitting here in meditation. He sat here in a certain kind of despondence and anger about himself. So the energy up there is very, very, very different from anything you would have imagined. Because he stayed there for a considerable amount of time, there is a tradition that wherever Shiva stayed for a certain period of time, that place we tend to call it as Kailash. So this became the Kailash of the South. Because he spent a certain amount of time and because of a certain energy that he invested in the space, any number of yogis followed suit and right through the ages, thousands of years, there is a history of sages, seers, a very unique system of mysticism where generally they were referred to as siddhas or in Tamil they're called siddhas. The South Indian mysticism is very, very unique. You will not find that form of mysticism anywhere else in the world.
So in this tradition many came and one yogi who is significant for us is the Sadhguru Sri Brahma who lived in the early part of 20th century. And when he had to leave his body,
He went up the mountain, he sat there and this is a unique happening which even today is as alive as it ever was. He exits through the seven chakras, which is an extremely rare happening. And even today in that place, it's just the way it was on that day, that energy and that space, just like that. You need not know anything, it'll just blow you out because there are just a few places on the whole planet which have witnessed that kind of event where a being leaves through all his seven chakras. Because he's a Chakreshwara. One who can leave through his seven chakras is called a Chakreshwara. Shiva was known as a Chakreshwara, Matsyendranath was known as Chakreshwara, Gorakhnath was known as Chakreshwara, and a few other yogis have been known as Chakreshwaras and they're just handful in this few thousand years.